Hello, my name is METİN Arıdaşır. This is 319th part of explanation of my theory. According to my theory and my formulas, Aridaşir'S new theory of superconductors and superconductivity. At first, I asked some questions. 1. Are there electrons inside of a superconductor? Why is the electric field zero if there are electrons in a superconductor? If a charged particle cannot be considered without an electric field, why is the electric field of electrons in a superconductor zero? Cooper pair picture cannot explain this. 2. Would Maxwell electromagnetic theory emerge if only superconductors could be used in electric circuits? If the answer is no, can it be said that electromagnetic theory is a universal and general theory? Moreover, is this theory true? 3. Can radio waves be created in superconductors? Remember that radio waves, electromagnetic waves, are produced in conductors artificially. 4. What is the current speed? What is the current speed? What is the current speed in superconductors? Can it be detected? What are the consequences if this current has possibility of exceeding the speed of light? For instance, as I told you before, 6.20 times greater than the speed of light. Yes, now I will go on. 1. On the occasion of explaining superconductors, it would be useful to emphasize this. In almost all objects, there are proton-bound electrons and free electrons together in certain proportions, and these also interact. In my previous videos, I revealed their interaction mechanism, laws and formulas. As spectral lines detection computation, I advise you to look at my previous videos. For instance, if you could look at copper atoms at the electron level, you would see that the sum of the electrons are constantly expanding and contracting, while some of the electrons are ionizing and reattaching to the protons, atoms. While they were expanding and contracting, you would witness each of them releasing a spherical single wave pulse, which enlarges at the speed of light through eternity. You would witness the free electrons emitting consecutive spherical ring-shaped intertwined light waves as soon as they ionized, until they reconnected to the atoms. This process of expansion, contraction, and single wave pulse propagation does not occur spontaneously. Only proton-bound electron motion forms can do this under the effects of consecutive waves of free electron motion forms. By the way, as I told you before, there are two main types of light. One of these types of lights is consecutive spherical ring-shaped, intertwined interconnected consecutive light waves from free electron motion forms. The other is single wave pulses from proton-bound electron motion forms. And both types of light have radically different properties. All continuous spectral sources are free electron motion forms and their consecutive waves, provided that free electron motion forms are relocating, like this, like this. Yes. Two component, this is single electron motion form, now without spherical waves. When it is free, it starts to propagate consecutive waves, okay? Yes. Now, yes. All continuous spectra sources are free electron motion forms and their consecutive waves, provided that free electron motion forms are relocating. Continuous spectrum. Yes. As I told you before, a continuous spectrum, contrary accepted physics theory, represent a single frequency, variable point velocity, variable speed of light, variable velocity of light. This means variable point wavelength and variable energy of a free electron motion form. All continuous spectrums, thermal radiations, black body radiations, etc. should be understood in this context. All characteristic absorption emission lines, spectral line sources, like this, spike, all characteristic absorption emission line sources are proton-bound electron motion forms. Don't forget, as I told you before, electrons in an atom are not identical and dimensionless point particles. They have three dimensions, inner adiabatic mediums, from my previous videos. And each proton-bound electron motion form have a specific initial wavelength that represented by a ground state, an undisturbed specific highest ionization energy in a multi-electron atom. Don't forget, according to me, ground state energy is the highest ionization energy, contrary to accepted physics theories. Free electron motion forms are the unique sources of successive light waves, heat, temperature, gravity, electric, repulsive, attractive forces, and successive waves of free electrons affect proton-bound electrons. Each consecutive wave of free electron makes a proton-bound electron expand at the rate of squared wave number. When this wave affects vanishes, expanded proton-bound electron shrinks at the rate of squared wave number. While shrinking, it pushed out. Only a single spherical wave pulse as a globe that enlarges at the speed of light. If there were no free electrons in our universes, there wouldn't be gravitation between atoms, objects, there wouldn't be heat and temperature. All atoms and proton-bound electrons would cycle at their first cycle at ground state energy levels in an absolute zero gravity, absolute zero temperature, and absolute darkness. Proton-bound electrons cannot produce and propagate consecutive waves. They cannot produce single-wave pulse spontaneously. Therefore, for a conductor, resistance, heat, and temperature represent free electrons number and their energies relatively, proton-bound electrons number and their energies. Voltage represents proton-bound electrons number and their energies. Okay? Like what? Like this. Proton-bound voltage represents proton-bound electron. Resistance represents free electron motion forms. Okay? Free electron motion forms have consecutive waves, effective. Proton-bound electron motion forms passive under the influence of free electron motion forms consecutive waves. They can only produce single wave pulse for each interaction. Yes. 2. An ideal superconductor shouldn't produce any type of light. An ideal superconductor shouldn't produce thermal or blackbody radiation. 3. An ideal superconductor should have a magnetic shield that make gravity effects vanish. Probably magnetic shields of planets prevent them to fall onto the sun or stars. 4. Resistance represents ionized electron motion forms in a conductor, for instance copper. Ionized electron motion forms are free electron motion forms that produce and propagate consecutive light waves, and these waves affect the other proton-bound electron motion forms as making them enlarge. When these effects vanish, proton-bound electron motion forms shrinks again, and each one produce and pour out only a single wave pulse that represented by only a spectral line of that conductor copper. Because these ionized electron motion forms waves affect proton-bound electron motion forms closely, long wavelength single wave pulses occur more. 5. If there is no light at a frequency that will ionize the largest electron in the environment where the copper conductor is located, thermal radiation and resistance begin to disappear in copper. This is the moment when copper turns into a superconductor. I will go on next. Have a good evening. See you later.